Welcome to the Expansive Astrology Podcast, where we look at using astrology beyond the tropes and horoscopes to tune into the natural forces around us and within us, honoring our true nature to craft our future. I'm your host, Melissa, the self-carewitch, and I'm here to help you meet your magic. Without further ado, let's begin this week's episode with a tarot reading for the collective. Hi, welcome to episode 24 of the Expansive Astrology Podcast. I have a special episode for you today. It's the transition from Libra to Scorpio. We have a little Q&A. I can't wait to get into it. But first things first, as always, the collective tarot reading. This is a 4-card spread inspired by the Soul Check-In spread by Lindsay Mack, applied to the collective. And present for us this week is the Judgment card, which is related to Scorpio. So that is well timed. It's a big energy. It's a big card. It's kind of it's kind of massive. It's the last card before we reach the last card. The Judgment card comes right before the World card. This is the final push that we need. This is the final experience that we have before reaching the World card. So in Judgment, it's just this serious reckoning. It's this serious invitation to be with what is, to be aware of the truth, to not ignore any calls, to not ignore your knowing. This is like thorough self-reflection. It's committed listening, authentic like commitment to being open to what is, being open to what is being illuminated to us, what we're invited to be with, really just being with the truth with a capital T. And that being supported by the Knight of Pentacles feels really appropriate. The Knight of Pentacles, the Knight of the element Earth, mutable Earth, which is Virgo. The Knight of Pentacles is about and Virgo is about trusting the divine timing of our lives, slowing down, a willingness to go slowly, to move carefully, to follow and trust divine timing. So Judgment is this reckoning, which may be something very obvious and overt to you. I know there's something that I'm moving through in my own life that I'm like, yeah, that feels pretty judgmenty. It feels like something is being made very clear to me, and it's kind of like those moments where it's like, are you gonna ignore this? Are you gonna continue to ignore this, or are you gonna finally open your eyes and deal with it? Are you gonna accept that you are what you are and are not permitting or allowing? Are you going to actually acknowledge what is and is not in your control? There was something just the other day on Mom Twitter, which is a beast of its own. If you know, you know. But there was this discourse happening. I'm not going to get into it because it's not important. But what was happening for me is I found myself kind of judging this thing that a lot of moms do. I was one of those people who, before I became a mom, I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that thing. I'm not going to be one of those moms. And I still have that. Okay, this is wild. I'm revealing a major flaw in my thinking. But I before I had my baby, I was not going to be one of those moms, and then even now, as my baby is almost 2, I was reading about this thing, and I was like, those moms. And I had to stop myself. I was like, wait, just shut up. I do that. I do that thing. And I still am judging other people for it. And it's cognitive dissonance, right? It's like this like ignorance is bliss. This just complete disconnect was happening in my brain, where this belief was so deeply rooted within me that I did not stand for this. I didn't like it. I judged other women for doing it so much, and it was just so ingrained that way that it was crazy making. It's insanity. I do the thing. And yeah, I was still like having this weird judgment about it. And I'm using the word judgment as I'm reading the judgment card. And that's kind of coincidental. The judgment card isn't always about like what we judge in our lives, but more so I tell that story because that was a judgment moment in that I wasn't seeing the truth. And our brains do this all the time in all sorts of ways. Kind of the cognitive dissonance, some dissociation, a little dash of dissociation, a little dash of learned helplessness, a little dash of I'm right and they're wrong and my motivation is right and they're, just we all have it. We all do it. And the judgment card, this experience in life, this experience in the major arcana is whatever we need to come to terms with and get really real about if we actually want to affect any change in our lives. And then supported by the Knight of Pentacles, which is just, as we're doing that judgment work, we have an invitation to move slowly, to move in a way that is so soul-centered and so soul-aligned that other people might think we're crazy, that our ego might think we're crazy, right? But that's what the Knight of Pentacles is all about. Careful, intentional, slow, soul-guided, tending, caretaking. And then our lesson for the week, where we might have some spicy opportunities to refine our relationship with this, we have the Hierophant, which I think maybe has come up in the lesson spot in previous episodes. Never miss an opportunity to check in with your knowing and to trust your knowing. Never defer your own knowing to somebody else. There are so many times that we do that. Like, oh, well, what do you think? We look to other teachers or authority figures or guides or just random ass people on the internet, or maybe even people that we don't actually truly respect. But like, there are so many ways that we like dishonor our own inner Hierophant. You don't need anyone else. No teacher, no counselor, no like mother, no husband. You don't need anyone else to tell you what you know. You don't need anyone else to connect you to like your inner knowing and your like higher consciousness. Of course, engage with guides and teachers and use guides and teachers and like learn as much as you can. And I think having mentors is so important. Like I invest in mentors and I am a mentor. So it's not about not doing those things, but it's about trusting yourself as an authority too. Checking in with ourselves for the answers that we seek. You can trust yourself. You don't need anyone or anything outside of yourself to know what is right for you and what is aligned and what is true. Like the guidance that you seek can come from within. You have to kind of invite it in and lean into it, trust it, and it's there. No matter who you are, it's there. We all are the Hierophant. And that's what we're learning this week. And our anchor, what we're invited to anchor into to do that, is the King of Swords. The King of Air, this like leadership, this like expert expression of what it means to be the element air. So, and air, the swords, are all about how we communicate, how we think, how we make connections, our brain chemistry, and then how we like communicate what is happening in our brain. And the King of Swords is the expert at saying hard things, the expert at having a brain, which is hard, right? Brains are tough little boogers. I don't know what I'm saying. But like there are so many reasons that it can be really hard to engage with the brain. Lindsay Mack says the Suit of Swords invites us, it takes us on this journey of learning to befriend the mind. Learning to have a mind that is on board with our evolution and our soul growth. And so the king is the ultimate embodiment of that befriending with the mind, of that having a brain that supports expansion and evolution, right? And for a billion reasons, that can be really difficult for the brain. It's kind of the brain's MO. Its whole thing is keeping us safe, keeping our world predictable and safe and the same. And then you add on social conditioning and trauma and chemical imbalances and hormonal imbalances. I guess that's the same thing. I don't know. And substance use and like all of the ways that numbness is normalized and encouraged in our society. There are just a million reasons that it's hard to have a brain. But our anchor this week, we're almost invited to pretend that we got it on lock. We're invited to anchor in with what it means to be the King of Swords, your version of the King of Swords, your version of leadership with your brain, empowerment with your brain, and with your tongue. So like maybe you need to hear this message in terms of both like your brain and your words. Maybe like one of those is feeling more important than the other. Maybe you are one of those people who, when I say engaging with your brain, like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's hard to separate the brain from the you. So wherever you fall, stay open to and just like lean into what you know you need to hear. This week, anchor in with an expert relationship with your brain or your tongue. An expert ability to express yourself effectively. You know, the King of Swords is not afraid to say hard things, not afraid to establish or maintain a boundary. They're not afraid to be vulnerable and say truths that are revealing or kind of scary. The King of Swords knows that everything that the brain tells you is not necessarily the truth. The King of Swords knows that the brain will bring up cognitive distortions of all sorts. It's hard work. It's hard work. It's hard work. There's a lot of layers to doing that. And with sword work, with brain chemistry, if you need professional help, you know, don't shy away from that. When this card comes up, you are being invited to speak from the soul, even if it might not be received well. Your responsibility is not to be received well. It's to speak. It's to rule your kingdom. And the King of Swords is about embracing our role as leader right where we are, however that looks. Don't hold back. But stay appropriate and aligned. So overall, big invitations to embody like leadership and authority over our lives between a knight, a king, and the Hierophant. Like, I'd say that's authority and leadership. and embodying all of that, being with all of that while we're moving through a judgment week. That feels really important. That authority, that embodiment. So good luck. Now, this week is a transition week. We are between Libra and Scorpio. And that's why last week I asked you for your cues that I can A. And I must admit that I overestimated like the size of my audience. My podcast isn't big enough yet to have the kind of Q&A that I was picturing, I must humbly admit. And I am so thankful and excited about the questions that I did get. I have a few great questions to dive into with you guys today. And the first is, any advice for baby witches or witchlings who have to be in the broom closet? This is very common for a number of reasons. I myself hid my spirituality. I was in the broom closet. I hid my witchiness for my whole life, forever, before I started doing this crazy thing that I'm doing now. And one of my first true witch teachers when I was a young adult strongly encouraged me to stay in the broom closet, to keep it a secret, because she herself had experienced firsthand the discrimination that happened. She had a terrible time with her professional life because she was an out witch. Now, luckily, witchery is very popular these days. There's been a lot of reclamation around witchery and spirituality, and it's much more naturalized and normalized. But I don't mean to go on a tangent, but it kind of feels relevant. When I was growing up, I grew up in a Christian household, which means I grew up with some interesting narratives, to say the least. But narratives that the Christians were the minority, and that everyone else was consumed by Satan and the devil and pop culture, any deviation from the very manualized way of being was not okay, right? And that's just, some subtle and overt messaging that I experienced growing up in a Christian household. But then looking at, we're not that far removed from the witch trials and women healers, medicine makers being persecuted, tortured, murdered for simply being spiritual, for being healers, medicine makers. So whether it's very present in your life overtly, whether it's present in your life rather subtly, or just kind of the bigger culture at large, the witch wound, it is a bold thing to be an out witch, and it's not always possible. And I remember grappling with the question, am I allowed to call myself a witch? I didn't feel witchy enough, especially when I was in the broom closet and I couldn't have the books laying around and, the altar, and I couldn't have the very, very obviously witchy things. And it's not about the things. It's not about the aesthetic. It's not about being seen in it, right? Witchery, magic is so personal. And it makes me fucking mad that we have to be in the broom closet. It fucking pisses me off. The patriarchy. And maybe I'll just not even rant about it. I'll just say the patriarchy and you can fill in the rant for yourself. I'll save us all the time. But the fact that so many of us cannot feel safe to express our knowing, right? Speaking of the Hierophant as the lesson this week, but the fact that so many of us will be rejected, fired, questioned, called crazy, accused of being in cahoots with Satan. It makes me so mad. So the first thing that I just want to reemphasize is that you're a witch if you say you're a witch, and you can kind of define for yourself, what does that mean? And this can be a really empowering practice. What does it mean to you to be a witch, to be spiritual? And usually the answers to those questions are very beautiful and noble and well-intentioned and from a heart of service and soul and alignment, right? So I personally think you can't go wrong when you're approaching something from those places. But anyway, I think having a solid connection with what that means to you is just such a good start. And then also knowing that you can be that. You can be a witch, you can be a healer, you can be connected and magical, alchemical, ethereal, and nobody would ever know, right? You can do magic with salt packets from McDonald's and old birthday candles. There are very witchy things or divination tools that are very mainstream, depending, but things like pretty rocks, until you go a little overboard, I think you can typically get away with a certain number of crystals or gemstones in your home before people start to kind of look at you a little weird. Essential oils is rather mainstream and also very witchy. Kitchen witchery is a great way to dabble in magic and witchery that would be rather subtle and maybe invisible to anybody watching. Learning different herbs and their medicines. And I recommend when you're on Pinterest or whatever, searching for things, search for lazy witch hacks. Because there are the practices and the spells that are elaborate and involved and take ingredients and time, and then there are also rituals or spells that are not elaborate whatsoever, so don't get too caught up in the pomp and circumstance of things. You can infuse your witchiness into every single teeny little thing that you do. Every time I put my kiddo in his car seat, I kiss his forehead first, and that has a magical witchy intention behind it. Every time I lace my shoes, I'm tying an intention into the knot. Every time I braid my hair, every time I put oil on my face, every cup of tea I drink. Right? These are magical moments for me that people observing would never know are magical. I have a tarot deck with me everywhere I go, and half the time I'm pulling a card in the back, completely privately, even in public. People would never know. So I don't know if that met your intention behind the question, but I hope that my ramblings that were inspired by your question were useful for you. I did have a baby witch workshop up on my website. I took it down because it wasn't perfect. I just haven't had the time to get back to it, but I do intend to. So something to kind of look forward to. Seems like it would be perfect for you. Now, this next question I want to touch on kind of ties in with what I was just saying about like infusing your witchy practice into everything you do. And like, it's nice to have the big elaborate rituals and spells. It's really nice to have that, and it can be so much more than that. And the next question was, how do you keep track of the astrological seasons and moon phases, etc.? I feel like they always sneak up on me and I'm never prepared. This felt so relatable to me when I read that question. And so I want to re-emphasize for the third time, this stuff does not have to be elaborate. When I was early on in my practices, I would stop myself from doing things because I felt like I was late all the time. I always felt like I wasn't prepared enough. And if I didn't celebrate the new moon before the new moon, basically, I would tell myself I missed it, and that if I did any sort of practice around it, that it would mess it all up, and I'm a terrible witch, and I don't deserve to call myself a witch anyway, and I should just give up altogether. I don't know. It's common. It's hard. It's a lot to keep track of. So I do have a couple different planners. There's one. It's the Witch's Date Book. I've used this planner like 4 years in a row at least. It's really great. It doesn't tell you everything, but it tells you enough to keep track, and it's a pretty good start, and it can be helpful, but not so useful for people who are in the broom closet and can't really have their planner be a witch's date book. But I do recommend keeping track in that sort of way. I do it old school with paper and planners. I'm sure there are apps. I do have a moon phase app. It's not that great, so I'm not going to recommend it, but I'm sure there are really great ones out there that can help you really stay anchored in with it. But either way, like, don't put pressure on yourself to need to do these elaborate things. Don't put pressure on yourself to need to be on time. I mean, ideally, yes, right? But like, it's a practice for a reason. And like, don't put too much pressure on yourself. There's a lot of opportunity to have like rituals or practices when it comes to the astrological seasons or the moon phases, right? There are 12 seasons in a year. There are 12 to 13 moon cycles in a year, and each moon cycle has 8 different phases. There are 4 to 8 major like witchy holidays, depending on which ones you celebrate and partake in. There are so many opportunities to anchor in with the seasons. And that's what it's about, is anchoring in with the seasons. So the way I do it with the Expansive Astrology, where each season I look at this different, kind of chunk of my life. And within that season, I use the new moon and the full moon as my like anchors for my practice. So that means every 2 weeks, I'm anchoring in with my practice. I like to do it that way. I have a really busy life. That feels like enough for me, where it kind of like challenges me to stay on top of it, to stay on top of my practice, my spirituality, my connection, my goals. But it's like not so challenging. It's not so much that it's undoable, right? Once about every 2 weeks with the new moon and the full moon, I prioritize. My husband knows this, I need an hour or 30 minutes. Just re-emphasizing again, it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be a whole huge thing. I think just using these things, using the seasons or the phases as inspiration or anchors or like timekeepers to help you stay on track with your alignment and your evolution and your growth. That's kind of the intention behind it for me. And like, putting any pressure on myself to like make that happen is not conducive to that evolution and that growth. But like just just enough pressure that I take it seriously and I stay committed to it. But like, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I'm late, I'm late. If all I do is like pull a tarot card for a theme and write out one page of like intentions, I at least want to do that. So my recommendation, if things kind of sneak up on you or it's hard to keep track, starting with the obvious, download a good app or get yourself a planner. Enter the things that you want to stay on top of, like in your planner or your phone. And my next piece of advice would be to like just start small. Start with just one thing, whether that's when Scorpio season starts next week. You set your intentions for the Scorpio season, which is about a month long. And then in 4 weeks, when Sagittarius starts, you do the same thing, and that's your thing. And then all you have to keep track of is which season you're in. And you're kind of anchoring in with your intentions or your goals or your witchy practice once every month when the season changes. If that doesn't quite resonate, maybe you are the type of witch who follows the moon phases more, and whether that's all 8 of them or just 4 of them, like the half moons and the full and the new moon, or if it's just the full and the new moon. That's a simple place to start. Or if that doesn't feel like your jam, practice just paying attention to the bigger Sabbats, like Samhain and the solstices. Whatever you choose, own it and remember your intention. The intention is probably, if I may be so bold to assume what your intention might be, I'm guessing it's something like what I said. You want to stay connected to yourself, connected to spirit, connected to the unfolding of your life, your own expansion, evolution, and alignment. And witches do that by staying in sync with nature and with the stars. There's no room for like criticism and perfectionism there. There's no need for it. Do the best you can. Start small and build from there. Try to keep it fun. Try to take the pressure off. Keep it fun. Just enough pressure that you're staying accountable to your practice. But mostly, it's supposed to be fun. The last question I received was, how did I get into tarot? And I'm like just smiling, so nostalgic, thinking back to like baby Melissa. I had no idea what I was doing. So it all started when I was a teenager. Well, tarot started when I was a teenager. I would run around. I know I just told you that I grew up in a Christian household, so that's what makes this all the more scandalous, if you can imagine what this was like. I would run around and play witch as a kid, way before I knew what tarot cards were, way before I actually truly knew what it meant to play witch. But that was my thing. And also just like the fascination with fairies as a kiddo. And I don't know, looking back on it now, I'm like, aw, it's like cute. It's cute to think of little baby witch Melissa as like not only a baby witch, but like a literal baby witch. It wasn't until I was a teenager that my mom had gotten a like spirit animal deck. It's a pretty popular one. I see it around a lot. And the problem with something like that is that we didn't know how to use it correctly. It doesn't belong to our culture. And I was using these like these animal medicine cards as like an oracle or like a tarot. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what I thought they kind of were for. And they're not. It's different. But I stole that book and that deck of cards from my mom, and I held on to it for a very long time. And, as I'm thinking about it now, before that, it wasn't tarot, obviously, but the way I had engaged with the Bible and like my little devotional books was very similar. I was encouraged to there were the ones that like you read a passage every day, but also like I was encouraged to kind of just like flip open the book and choose a page and read the verse, and whatever that is what you need to hear today. I remember doing that a lot with my like Christian reading materials. And is that different? I mean, yes, it obviously is, but is it? I didn't get my first tarot deck until my 20s. I always dabbled with the animal cards. I dabbled with astrology. I would dabble in these things, but I never really dove in or committed until my 20s. I had a really great teacher. And I think I put off dabbling or really going there. I put it off because I felt really intimidated. And then there was also the underlying, like, I had a lot of like sticky beliefs about spirituality and tarot. And, I revealed some of the narratives that existed when I was growing up. And even though I had like outgrown a lot of the conditioning that was ingrained in me as a little one, I was still young, and I still had a lot, like I still existed in that conditioning, right? Even if I had outgrown a lot of it, I still believed that I couldn't get rid of my father's voice in my ear saying, there are crazy people out there who worship the sky and the clouds and the trees, and they're kooky, crazy kooks, and then as it like, I couldn't help it, I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't not take this path. Or I guess I could have chosen not to, but it's one of those things where like once I started and the more and more aligned I felt, and the more I learned to like lean in and follow my intuition and follow what feels good and feels natural to me, that's how like the Self-Care Witch was born and Expansive Astrology was born. Like sometimes I feel like I'm just kind of doing what I'm told almost. But anyway, I'm on a massive tangent. Let me rein it back in. So once I started, it became kind of like a force. It became undeniable. But I did feel kind of intimidated for a really long time. And I would kind of dip my toe in and then really back away, and I feel like that was kind of the story of all of my like teenage years, basically. But once I finally started engaging with the tarot deck, and I kind of took the pressure off and realized that I didn't need to know what every card meant to start. Like I could learn as I went, and I started with like one card a day, or going to my deck multiple times a day asking, what do I need to know? What do I need to pay attention to? What do I need to anchor in with? Little questions like that. And it became such a healing tool, such an ally and a friend. And my first tarot deck, I still have it, and I busted it out now again. And it's like, I had a sense of connection, a sense of knowing, a sense of like, faith in myself, in my direction, that I had never had before. Because I would pull a card, and oftentimes I wouldn't know right away, obviously. You do the Google search and read the Biddy Tarot and or listen to I would search cards on YouTube a lot and look in the little booklet that comes with the deck. And for a long time, I felt like I was like just piecing it all together, and it felt really pretty messy, and it still felt overwhelming, you know. But the sense of like confidence it gave me, and the sense of like connection that it gave me, made that bearable, I guess. It wasn't until I really dove into soul tarot theory, Lindsay Mack's tarot theory, that the tarot really started to feel truly medicinal for me. It really started to make sense, and I started to gain the confidence to read not only for myself but for other people too. Soul Tarot by Lindsay Mack. I mean, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know by now that this is essentially just a Lindsay Mack fan podcast. But the way that Soul Tarot theory opens up the cards and rethinks the cards and really approaches life and the Fool's Journey from this like spiralic, just juicy, medicinal, truly medicinal, trauma-informed point of view, queer point of view. Like, it's just brilliant. It's freaking brilliant. So it was Lindsay Mack's tarot theory that really got me to like take it more seriously and start to truly actually study the cards and study different tarot theories. And so now as a reader, because of that, I feel like I have a really like unique point of view. It's a little bit of Lindsay Mack. We got a little bit of Rachel Pollack. I am fascinated in like the super old school, like Arthur Waite or Jungian psychology, like based interpretations of the cards as well. And I like to think that I bring a little bit of all of it to the table, to my tarot table, along with my own like connection to my own guides, which I will also say has become more and more accessible, obvious, easeful, especially since I received an Akashic reading. That really helped me to connect in a new way. So just to kind of drop that in there, if you feel called to that sort of thing, I do recommend it. So this was quite a chatty episode. I hope it very different than usual. We're not really touching on any expansive astrology today. Next week, we are diving all the way into Scorpio season. And I hope that that still feels useful. You know, I hope that this weird conversation has still felt useful for you in some way. I appreciate you being here. But before I go, I have a brief astrological forecast for you. This is printed in the show notes below. All the times are in Eastern Daylight Time. And this is just some of the more major transits happening in the sky, as well as times when the moon will be void of course. And I just encourage you not to overly structure your life around these things, but rather just kind of take note and see how they may impact you as they unfold. Just be really observational. Also, it is recommended that when the moon is void of course, we take extra care of ourselves. We kind of engage in a little extra slowness, a little extra softness, a little extra self-care. And I will take any excuse to lean into that and to encourage you to do the same. So without further ado, first off, starting on Thursday the 20th, the moon is void of course from 6:35 a.m. until it enters Virgo at 12:25 p.m. And then Saturday the 22nd, the moon is void of course from 2:17 p.m. until it enters Libra at 9:24 p.m. Sunday the 23rd is a pretty big day. Saturn goes direct, but also Scorpio season begins. And Venus enters Scorpio as well as the sun. Monday the 24th, the moon is void of course, starting at 8:36 p.m. until it enters Scorpio on Tuesday the 25th at 3:18 a.m. And then we have the new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio at 6:49 a.m. If you would like to learn how to work with that new moon solar eclipse, please join me Sunday the 23rd at this week's Moon Circle. I'll be sharing my recommendations on eclipse season and how to work with it, the best way to set our manifestations during eclipse season. So I highly recommend you be there. That'll be Sunday the 23rd, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, in person in Old Town Fort Collins or from your living room over Zoom. You can find out more at theselfcarewitch.com. And just a friendly reminder, if you would like an all-access pass to these moon circles, or if you would like to support the podcast, you can do so by signing up for the Meet Your Magic monthly membership. It's just $21 a month, and not only do you get the Moon Meetup All Access Pass, and not only do you get to show your support for the podcast, but also I will send you a hand-typed, a personalized 5-card spread at the beginning of the month, every month. So I would love to have you join. I'm so thankful to those of you who have joined already. And whether you are a member or not, I would really love to see you at the Moon Circle this Sunday. Otherwise, I'll see you back here next week for episode 25. We're welcoming in Scorpio season and all of the medicine and invitations that it can bring. It'll be a good episode. Until then, thank you so much for being here. Take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Now, before you go, let me keep your ear for just a moment. This week's episode is brought to you by www.theselfcarewitch.com, my bread and butter, where you can find more information on my current courses, offerings, and other fun ways to connect with myself and yourself. If you enjoyed this episode and you dig what I'm doing here, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and leave a review. It helps so much. And if you'd like to connect with me, head to theselfcarewitch.com. I'd truly love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.